Nursing and pumping schedule. This one's a tricky one because if you are breastfeeding, it can come easily to some people and it can be very difficult for others. Milk production is a completely different thing. So for some women, they produce a lot of milk. For others, they don't. Some produce very fatty milk, some don't. So it's a very wide scope of things that can happen when you're breastfeeding. And that's a whole other topic I could go into about, does it hurt and how do you start and what's a letdown and all of those things. So if you want to know that, I can make another video on that, because I know when I was a new mom, I was like, how do you breastfeed, basically, right? But for moms who are breastfeeding and want to get on some sort of nursing and pumping schedule, I would say throw that out the window, because really when your baby is so little, it's going to be on demand and you're basically going to feed them whenever they want to be fed. And some days that might be every hour, some days that might be every 2 or 3 hours. And some babies you have to wake up to nurse them right away. So one, it depends on your baby, and two, it depends on your body and how you're breastfeeding and what you're producing. But for what I've been doing since Luke's been born, once we got past the whole colostrum stage where I actually had milk and he started to get a latch down properly, I nursed him on demand whenever he was hungry. And I found he wanted to eat about every 2 hours when he was a newborn. Sometimes I'd get a 3-hour stretch, but it was mostly about every couple of hours, which doesn't leave a lot of time in between. So don't forget that when you're a new mom. The feed time goes from when you start feeding to your next feed. So if you fed at 9 a.m. and they're feeding every 2 hours, even though you may have fed him or her from 9 to say 10, they're going to be ready to eat again at 11. So it doesn't leave a lot of time in between, especially if your baby's feeding even more than that. So it can be really exhausting and really tiring. So to get on some sort of schedule can be difficult. What I did was basically figured out what his routine was, which for me was about every 2 to 3 hours he wanted to eat. And then I knew those times that he was going to likely want to eat, and I could sleep in between, eat in between, do something in between. Once he started going a little bit of a longer stretch, which I would say just recently he started. So he's 10 weeks old now, and just recently I can get 4 hours sometimes. But he's still pretty consistent with every 2.5 to 3 hours wanting to eat during the day. And nighttime is a little bit better for us now, just in the past couple of weeks. So you kind of plan everything around that. So some people have asked me, how do you get out? Because they see me on our Insta stories that, I'm out shopping or doing things, or we went on a wine tour, and I left him overnight one night, and some people were like, how did you do that? I can't get away from my baby at all. And what I did is I started to pump at night. So I'd give him a bottle before bed, and then I would pump before I went to bed, and then I'd have that bottle to freeze or give the next night. And whenever I felt really full, if I felt like I had some extra after I fed him, or he went a bit of a longer stretch, I would pump. And typically you can pump if you're producing enough in between feeds here and there. I didn't pump a ton. I usually have about 2 to 5 4-ounce bags of milk in the fridge at all times, so that if I do want to go somewhere or I'm not going to be home in time, I can have that milk for him. And I did want to get him used to taking a bottle so that I could leave him from time to time. And what works nicely about that is if you do miss a feed, that you can pump another bottle and then restock your supply. So that's kind of what I do. In the night, he is sleeping a little bit better. So right now at about 10 weeks old, we're up usually about once a night. and then I can also pump in the morning, those mornings because I've missed a feed or two, and then freeze that milk. And I highly suggest leaving your baby, even if it's for a few hours. It recharges your batteries, if it's possible to do. I know it's not possible for everyone, but eventually, hopefully you'll get there if you can't leave them just quite yet. But the first time I left Luke, he was 3 weeks old, I think, and I just did it. It was really hard, but I just did it because I knew it was going to be good for him, and it was really good for me and for my relationship to you know, have that alone time with my husband again, have some time to myself, and get some sleep, because that is key. Get as much sleep as you can, because nursing and feeding is tough, and even if you're not nursing, it is such a schedule to get on when you're feeding a baby every 2 or 3 hours and you're running on very little sleep. So that's what I did. Another thing I'll just add to the end of this is, when did I start pumping? I didn't start pumping until I think I was around 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks after I had him, simply because I just wanted to make sure that he had his latch down and that my body was producing the milk he needed before I interfered with pumping. But I know people that have started way before that, way after that. Do whatever feels comfortable for you. And happy feeding, however that may be.